Hello, and welcome back to A Curious Kowalski. I'm Andrew. Today's journey is one I'm really excited about. We're going to dive through a family tree of ancient Western philosophers. Our chart is divided into three distinct sections: the pre-socratics, the classical philosophers, and the Hellenistic period. We'll be exploring not just the individual philosophers, but the influential schools of thought they inspired or belonged to. Now, an important note of caution: the lives and legacies of these philosophers are often shrouded in mystery. We're dealing with partial records, fragmented text, and an ongoing debate among scholars interpreting these intellectual jigsaw puzzles. But that's part of the intrigue, and we're here to uncover as much as we can. So without further ado, let's get started. The pre-Socratic philosophers, living in the 6th and 5th century BCE, marked the dawn of Western philosophy by initiating rational inquiry into the nature of the universe, the structure of reality, and the principles governing human life, thereby laying the foundation for the philosophical traditions that would follow. First up is the school of Miletus and Thales, who is credited by Aristotle as the very first philosopher. He proposed that water was the source of all life. After Thales is Anaximander, who gave us the very first world map. After Anaximander is Anaximenes, who was the original flat earther. If you're interested in a deeper dive into the origins of Western philosophy, which these three star in, you can check out my other video here. Moving on from Miletus, we have a name most of us recognize: Pythagoras. The Pythagoreans, marked in green, were the original math nerds, and there is a lot of debate over whether or not it was Pythagoras himself or one of his followers that proved the Pythagorean theorem. However, one thing we do know is that the Pythagoreans were very inclusive, especially when it came to women. Have you ever heard of the man who was taken out to sea and cast overboard to drown for discovering irrational numbers? That's Hippasus, one of the earliest Pythagoreans. Next is Philolaus, who was the first Pythagorean to write a book. And lastly, Archytas, who designed the first autonomous flying device, a mechanical bird called the pigeon, which was powered by steam propulsion. The philosophers marked in orange don't neatly tie into any school of thought and are better classified as individuals. First up is Xenophanes, who is known for criticizing the anthropomorphic or human depiction of gods in Greek mythology. He would argue that if horses or lions had hands, they would depict the gods in their own image. Around the time of Xenophanes is Heraclitus, who is known for his theory that the universe is in a constant state of flux, in which his famous phrase, "No man ever steps in the same river twice," illustrates. Anaxagoras was the first of the pre-Socratics to live in Athens, and he is known for his theory that the mind is the ordering principle of the cosmos. This is the first known instance of such a metaphysical perspective in Western philosophy. Empedocles is the first philosopher known to have proposed a comprehensive materialistic theory of the universe, claiming that all reality was composed of four elements: earth, air, fire, and water. If Heraclitus was known for his theory that the universe was in a constant state of flux, his counter were the Eleatics, founded by Parmenides. They believed that the universe is unified and unchanging, and that change and motion were illusions, contradicting the sensory experiences. Next is Zeno of Elea, who Aristotle credited as the originator of the dialectic method, a mode of discussion that resembles debate but avoids subjective elements such as emotional appeal. The atomists, Leucippus, alongside his more famous pupil Democritus, laid the foundation for atomic theory, proposing that the universe is composed of tiny, indestructible particles now referred to as atoms. Known as the laughing philosopher, Democritus is celebrated for championing the virtue of cheerfulness. The Sophists do not have a unifying theory. They were intellectual educators and philosophers who offered wisdom and practical skills, such as rhetoric, for a fee. They played a pivotal role in shaping intellectual and social life in the 5th century BCE, despite facing criticism for challenging traditional moral and social norms. The most famous of these was Protagoras, known for his relativistic perspective of truth, encapsulating the phrase "man is the measure of all things," and he proposed that each individual perceives the world uniquely. Thus, all perceptions are valid and true to the perceiver. Protagoras is noted for introducing the method of anti-logic, or presenting opposing arguments on any case. The next era of philosophy is the classical era, starting with Socrates. Socrates, despite having written nothing, is considered one of the philosophers who forever changed philosophy. If you're interested in a deep dive in Socrates, you can check out my previous video linked here. Socrates had many students, 2 of which wrote most of what we know about Socrates, Xenophon and Plato. 3 of his students started schools of their own, Cynicism, Cyrenaics, and Plato's Academy. The Cyrenaic school was founded by Aristippus, a student of Socrates. Cyrenaics believed in hedonism, or the pursuit of pleasure and avoidance of pain. They argued that sensory experience was the only true knowledge, therefore immediate physical pleasures and emotional delights should be the primary focus. They did not completely disregard the consequences of actions, but they did prioritize momentary pleasures. Arete, who was the daughter of Aristippus and mother to Aristippus the Younger. After Aristippus the Younger, these next 3 broke off, introducing innovations and ideas of their own. The opposite of the Cyrenaics are the Cynics, who adopted a rigorous ascetic or abstinence from sensual pleasures. Now, it's unlikely that Antisthenes would have identified as a Cynic, but his lifestyle heavily influenced the most famous Cynic, Diogenes. Diogenes was famous for living in a giant clay wine jar, and if you think you're frugal, I think Diogenes has you beat. There's a story where he threw away his cup when he saw a child drinking out of its hands, saying that the child had bested him in frugality. Next up is Crates of Thebes, who renounced a large fortune to live the life of a cynic, and is best known for being the teacher of Zeno, who founded the Stoics. We'll come back to him later, though. The last, and certainly not least, of the schools founded by Socrates' students was Plato's Academy. Established in 387 BCE, the Academy in Athens is regarded as the first institution of higher learning in the Western world. Plato, who revolutionized thought with his profound explanations into the nature of reality, knowledge, ethics, and the ideal society, laid the intellectual groundwork for much of the philosophical discourse that followed. Next up is Speusippus, I hope I'm saying that correctly, who was Plato's nephew and became the head of the academy, or the scholarch, for the next 8 years after Plato's death. Xenocrates was next and led the academy for 25 years. And after Xenocrates, we make our way to Crates of Athens, who was the last scholarch of the old academy. Going back up to shortly after Xenocrates took over the academy, a famous student of Plato's left and started something of his own. Aristotle and the Peripatetics were more of an informal club than a school, whose members conducted philosophical and scientific inquiries. Aristotle introduced a systemic approach to logical reasoning, laying groundwork for the scientific method and contributing foundational theories to numerous fields such as metaphysics, ethics, politics, and aesthetics. Theophrastus took over leadership after Aristotle, and Eudemus is believed to be the first historian of science. Lastly, Strato was a man of great eminence and nicknamed the natural philosopher. Another one of Aristotle's pupils, Alexander the Great, marked the start of the Hellenistic period with his death. This period concluded around the time Julius Caesar was transforming Rome into an empire. Moving our way back to Plato's Academy, we have our next iteration, the academic skeptics. Arcesiles initiated the skeptic phase and was one of the influential critics of the Stoics. Next was Lacydes, who was the first to step down as scholarch while still alive. Carneades, who issued in the next era of academic skeptics. Carneades was known for his argumentative agility, often arguing both for and against the same position in the exact same day. The last academic we'll talk about is Cicero. His work, De Republica, praised the virtues of a mixed constitution, combining elements such as monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy, and he defended the Roman Republic's constitution. He is also responsible for natural law, the idea that certain rights or values are inherited by virtue of human nature and universally recognized through human reason. Next is Epicurus, who founded the school of philosophy known as Epicureanism. He emphasized the pursuit of tranquility and pleasure, specifically freedom from physical pain and mental disturbances, as the ultimate goal of life. Epicurus was also known for his idea of friendship as an essential ingredient of happiness. After a brief period of military service, he finally settled in Athens in 306 BCE. There, he established a philosophical community known as the Garden, which was somewhat unique among Athenian schools of the time for admitting women and slaves along with the free men. Epicurus had several students and followers. The most famous was Lucretius, who was a Roman philosopher and poet. He is known for his poem On the Nature of Things, which offers the most extensive description and defense of the Epicurean philosophy. Next up are the Stoics, founded by Zeno, and they advocated that virtue, specifically excellent rational judgment, is the sole good. Stoics believed that a wise person should remain indifferent to external circumstances, desiring only what is within their control and accepting the unfolding of the natural world with equanimity. All events are interlinked in a chain of cause and effect directed by a divine rational principle, often referred to as fate. Stoic philosophy, therefore, fosters resilience and emotional fortitude by maintaining that happiness lies in understanding the nature of the universe and our place within it. Zeno, who was an avid reader of the Socratic dialogues, also studied under the Cynic Crates of Thebes and was influenced by the teachings of Plato's Academy. Following a shipwreck, he ended up in Athens, where he came across a book by Xenophon about Socrates, sparking his interest in philosophy. After Zeno was Cleanthes, a boxer that held the scholarship for the next 32 years after he died. Moving on from the Stoics, we have our last group, a philosophical movement known as Pyrrhonism, founded by Pyrrho. Pyrrhonism was one of the two major traditions of skeptic thought in the Greco-Roman world, the other being Plato's Academy. Pyrrho, a former painter, advocates for the suspension of judgment on all beliefs, promoting a life of tranquility and indifference. He continued to shape Hellenistic philosophy even after his peaceful death at the age of 90. Pyrrho was strongly influenced by Eastern philosophies while accompanying Alexander the Great on a campaign. Timon, Pyrrho's pupil, was a noted skeptic philosopher, playwright, and satirist. So that was a look at ancient Western philosophers from the pre-Socratics to the Hellenistic period. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Thank you for watching. If you like this, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. Until next time, stay curious.